what if I told you that in a corner of modern, 21st century Europe, a marketplace exists where families openly negotiate a price for their daughters' hands in marriage? Your mind might immediately leap to a grim, transactional scene: young women paraded like livestock, their futures bartered away for cash in a barbaric relic of a bygone era. The stories you might have heard frame it as exactly that: a purely commercial exchange, a shameful practice hidden in plain sight. But what if that shocking image is only a fraction of a much deeper, more complicated truth? What if this controversial event, so easily condemned by outsiders, is not a simple story of selling brides, but a complex, desperate, and surprisingly vibrant story of cultural survival? What if, to truly understand it, we must first unravel 1,000 years of history, a brutal legacy of persecution, and the unbreakable pride of a people without a land? Forget what you think you know. Today, we're not just visiting a place, we're peeling back the layers of one of Europe's most misunderstood communities to find the human heart beating beneath the Bulgarian bride market. Before we can set foot in the bustling, music-filled field of Stara Zagora, we must first travel back in time and far to the east. The people at the heart of our story are the Romani, and the very first step in understanding them is to unlearn the name they are most known by: Gypsy. That word is our first clue that this entire story is riddled with misunderstanding. It was born from a colossal European mistake in the Middle Ages, a flawed assumption that these dark-skinned, mysterious travelers must have come from Egypt. But the name stuck, and over centuries, it became coated with toxic stereotypes. In European folklore and literature, the Gypsy became a stock character: the wily fortune teller out to scam you, the wild-eyed child snatcher, the rootless wanderer incapable of honest work. The name itself became a cage of prejudice. The people themselves prefer the name Romany, derived from their own word, Rom, meaning man or husband, and their language, Romani, is a linguistic treasure map that charts their true journey. It's the key that unlocks their origin story. If you listen closely, you can hear the ghost words of their lost homeland. The Romani word for water is pani, just as it is in Hindi. The word for one is yek, from the Sanskrit ika. Their words for nose as neki, hair as balf, and eyes yak all echo the languages of northern India. These are not coincidences. For decades, linguists traced this path, and in recent years, genetic studies have confirmed it beyond any doubt. The Romani people began their long, slow exodus from the Punjab region of northern India over 1,500 years ago. Why did they leave? History, rarely tidy, doesn't offer a single, simple answer. There are several compelling theories. One suggests they were from the Dom, a lower caste group of itinerant musicians and entertainers. As Persian and later Byzantine courts developed a taste for exotic Indian performances, these groups may have traveled west, moving from one patron to another until their journey became a permanent migration. A grimmer, more violent theory points to the turbulent waves of invasions that rocked India around 1000 AD. The Ghaznavid Empire, a Turco-Persian dynasty, launched brutal raids into the Punjab. It's possible the ancestors of the Romani were swept up in this chaos, either as warrior caste groups fighting the invaders, or as enslaved captives taken west in the aftermath of defeat. Whatever the catalyst, this exodus marked the beginning of a perpetual diaspora. They moved through Persia, the Byzantine Empire, and into the Balkans, fanning out across the European continent like the seeds of a hardy, wind-blown plant. And here, we find the foundational paradox of the Romani people. Though they have lived among other nations for a millennium, They have almost never been of them. They carried their culture like a precious, invisible cargo. Their unwritten code of laws, the Kris, adjudicated by elders, governed their communities. Their complex rules of purity and pollution, known as marime, dictated everything from how food was prepared to how men and women could interact. Their fierce loyalty was not to a king or a country, but to their extended family clan, the Vitsa. They were a people without a map, so their culture became their territory. This fierce, insular preservation of identity was their ultimate survival tool. But it would also come at a terrible price. The very thing that made them unique would also make them a perpetual target. To understand the profound isolation of a Romani neighborhood in modern-day Bulgaria, you cannot simply look at the crumbling roads or the wary faces of its residents. You have to see the ghosts of the past that haunt these spaces. You have to understand that the Romani experience in Europe is not just a story of migration. It is a relentless, brutal, and unbroken story of persecution. Nowhere was this more institutionalized than in the principalities of Wallachia and Moldavia, which would later form the core of modern Romania. For over 500 years, from the 1300s until the mid-1860s, the vast majority of Romani people there were held in bondage. They were slaves. They were not considered human beings but property, listed in the inventories of wealthy landowners and Orthodox monasteries alongside tools, wagons, and livestock. An official document from 1845 lists a monastery's assets as including 200 beehives and 30 Romani families. They could be bought, sold, traded, or given as gifts. Families were systematically torn apart. Children sold away from their mothers, husbands from their wives, all at the whim of their owners. This brutal chapter of enslavement only ended around the time of the American Civil War, but the social stigma it created was indelible, cementing the Romani at the absolute bottom of the social hierarchy. But the darkest chapter was yet to come. While the world rightly remembers the Holocaust as the systematic murder of 6 million Jews, we often forget its other primary victims. The Nazis had their own chillingly bureaucratic name. For the Romani genocide, the porosmos, a word in the Romani language that means the devouring. Driven by the same twisted ideology of racial purity, the Nazis and their allies across Europe hunted, persecuted, sterilized, and murdered the Romani people with chilling efficiency. The methods were varied and horrific. On the Eastern Front, the mobile killing squads of the Einsatzgruppen shot them by the thousands in forests and ravines, dumping their bodies into mass graves. In collaborationist states like Croatia, the Ustaše regime ran their own brutal concentration camps, like Jasenovac, where tens of thousands of Romani were tortured and killed. And in the infamous death factories of Nazi-occupied Poland, like Auschwitz, Birkenau, a special Gypsy family camp was established. Here, families were kept together initially, only to be sent to the gas chambers en masse when disease and starvation had taken their toll. It is estimated that up to 500,000 Romani men, women, and children were devoured by the Nazi machine. This history is not a dusty footnote. It is the central, searing trauma that explains so much about the Romani psyche today. How can a community trust state institutions when those same institutions once sanctioned their enslavement and orchestrated their genocide? How can they willingly assimilate into a broader society that has, time and again, shown them only hatred and violence? The tendency to live in separate, insular communities, the impulse to rely only on one another, the practice of pulling children from state schools to protect them from relentless bullying and cultural erasure. These are not simply lifestyle choices. They are deeply ingrained survival mechanisms, forged in the fires of centuries of unimaginable persecution. This profound, historically justified mistrust is the invisible wall that separates Romani communities from the world around them, a wall far more formidable than any crumbling brick or mortar. Now, let's land in modern-day Bulgaria. It's a nation of stunning mountain landscapes, ancient Thracian tombs, and quiet monasteries. It is also, by a significant margin, the poorest member state of the European Union, grappling with the long shadow of its communist past, demographic decline, and pervasive corruption. And it is here, in this complex national landscape, that the long and troubled history of the Romani comes into sharp, contemporary focus. With an estimated 750,000 Romani citizens, they make up nearly 10% of Bulgaria's population, one of the highest concentrations in Europe. And the relationship between the majority and the minority is fraught with tension. From the perspective of many ethnic Bulgarians, the narrative is one of deep-seated frustration. They see sprawling Romani communities, or mahallas, often built illegally on municipal land on the forgotten outskirts of cities. They speak with anger about the tangled webs of wires that siphon electricity from the grid, and the illegal connections to the water supply. There is a widely held belief that the Romani are unwilling to work, preferring to live on social benefits, and that the costs of their unregulated lifestyle are unfairly passed on to law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. When Bulgaria joined the European Union in 2007, the opening of borders led to a significant wave of Romani emigration to wealthier nations. But for those who remained, the deep-seated issues and social friction only seemed to intensify. But to stop at that narrative is to see only one side of a warped and broken coin. To understand the other side, you have to walk into one of these neighborhoods yourself. Places like Faculteta in the capital, Sofia, or Stolipinovo in Plovdiv, infamous as Europe's largest Romani ghetto. What you witness is the physical manifestation of decades of systemic neglect. It is often literally where the pavement ends. Paved roads turn to dirt tracks choked with mud in the rain. Official sanitation is rudimentary or non-existent. Mounds of uncollected garbage become dangerous playgrounds for children. The air can be thick with the acrid smell of burning plastic, used for fuel in winter. This is not a chosen lifestyle, it is a meticulously constructed poverty trap. Discrimination in the formal job market is rampant and well documented. A common Romani surname on a CV can mean it goes straight into the bin. Segregated and underfunded schools within the mahallas provide a substandard education, ensuring the next generation is ill-equipped to compete. Without legal title to the land they live on, they cannot get permits to build or improve their homes. It's a vicious cycle. Segregation leads to poor education, which leads to unemployment, which leads to poverty, which deepens the segregation. The unwillingness to work looks very different when there is no work to be found. The illegal use of electricity becomes a desperate measure for a family in a community that has been literally and figuratively left in the dark by the state. It is in this crucible of poverty, mutual mistrust, and profound neglect that one of the world's most peculiar traditions continues to thrive. 4 times a year, on religious festival days, a field outside the southern Bulgarian city of Stara Zagora transforms. The scene explodes with color, sound, and nervous energy. Cars, many with German or UK license plates from families who have worked abroad, line the dusty road. The air thrums with the energetic, synthesized pulse of chalga music, a turbo, folk genre that is the soundtrack of modern Balkan celebration. The smell of grilled meats, kebab and kief, wafts from makeshift stands. But the main attraction is the people. Young women, dressed in their absolute finest. Shimmering, sequin dresses, towering high heels, and elaborate makeup applied with artistic precision. Stroll arm in small groups. Young men, also in their best clothes, often designer tracksuits or leather jackets, watch on, trying to project an air of confidence. Families gather in larger circles, laughing, dancing, and greeting relatives they haven't seen in months. This is the famous, or infamous, bride market. It is crucial to understand, this is not a market for all Romani. This is the exclusive and highly specific tradition of the Kaleci clan. The name itself tells their story in Turkish. Kale means tin or solder, and the Kaleci were historically a caste of itinerant coppersmiths. For centuries, they traveled the Bulgarian lands in caravans, mending the pots, pans, and cauldrons of the settled villagers. This nomadic lifestyle made them both essential and other, reinforcing their insularity. It also made it nearly impossible for their young people to meet and marry within their own small, scattered community. And for the Kaleci, marrying an outsider, or a gadjo, is unthinkable. So, these gatherings, held on major saints' days, became their social and genetic lifeline. The only opportunity for their children to find a suitable partner, preserving their culture, their traditions, and their bloodline. Today, though most are no longer nomadic, the tradition endures, radically transformed by modern economics. It has become a raw, public spectacle of negotiation. A young man, flanked by his parents, will approach the family of a girl he is interested in. A formal, respectful conversation begins. If there's mutual interest, the delicate topic of price arises. This is the bride price, paid by the groom's family to the brides. To be clear, in their view, this is not a payment for the girl. It is seen as a compensation to her family for the loss of a daughter, and, more importantly, a public testament to the groom's financial stability and his ability to provide for his new wife. The price is a complex calculation. A girl's beauty, her perceived virtue, and her age are paramount. A younger virgin from a well-respected family commands the highest price. Prices can range from a few thousand to upwards of 50,000 Bulgarian leva, which can be more than 27,000. In a country where the minimum wage is less than 500 euros a month, this sum is a life-changing fortune. The bride's family takes immense pride in a high price, boasting about it as a public validation of their daughter's worth and their family's honor. It's a system born of exclusion, a community-run mechanism for marriage and wealth redistribution, operating completely outside a mainstream society that has offered them so few other paths to economic security. But what of the young people at the center of this dizzying spectacle? The original story might suggest they seem content. But contentment is a placid word for the turbulent storm of emotions they must feel. Let's try to step into their shoes. Picture a 17-year-old girl, let's call her Maria. For months, her family has saved every leva, her mother perhaps taking on extra cleaning jobs to buy the glittering dress and expensive shoes she wears today. Maria was taken out of school after the 8th grade. It wasn't because her family devalues education, but because they fear the world outside their community. They fear the relentless bullying from non-Romani children. They fear, above all else, the risk of her developing a romantic relationship with a boy from outside the clan. A gadjo, which would bring unimaginable shame upon the family and render her unmarriageable within her own community. Her social life has been a small, intensely guarded circle of family and close neighbors. Today, as she walks through the market, A knot of terror and hope tightens in her stomach. This is her debut, her one great chance. It's her only socially acceptable path to meet a husband, to have her own family, to secure her future. She feels the appraising glances from the young men and their parents, dissecting her looks, her posture, her demeanor. She feels the immense weight of her own family's expectations. Is she beautiful enough? Will anyone make a good offer? A high price means honor for her family and the promise of a husband who can give her a better, more secure life. A low price, or no offer at all, means public shame and the terrifying prospect of being left behind. Is she happy? The word feels inadequate. She is a participant in a high-stakes performance, and she is playing her part, hoping for the best possible outcome in the only system she has ever known. Now, imagine a young man, let's call him Georgie. He might be 20 years old and has just returned from 2 years of grueling construction work in Germany. He and his family have meticulously saved that money. His goal today is not just to find a wife, but to find a good wife. Someone beautiful, from a respected family, who will be a good mother and bring honor to his own household. The market is his stage to prove his worth as a man. The ability to negotiate and pay a high price is a public declaration of his success, his maturity, and his readiness to be a husband and provider. He is not just buying a bride. He is making the single most important social and economic investment of his life. For both Maria and Georgie, this is not a romantic fairy tale. It is a high-stakes negotiation where their entire futures hang in the balance. Love is not the prerequisite for this marriage, it is a hoped-for outcome. The primary foundation is a union of families built on respect, security, and the continuation of the clan. While the parents, particularly the fathers, drive the financial negotiations, the young couple does have a voice. If Maria feels a genuine revulsion for a suitor, or if her mother has a bad feeling, the deal is often called off. There is agency, but it is an agency that operates within the incredibly narrow, tradition-bound confines of their world. It is absolutely crucial to state this clearly one more time. The Romani Bride Market is not representative of all Romani people. It is the hyper-specific, centuries-old practice of one small clan within the vast and diverse Romani world. To paint the entire global Romani population of over 12 million people with this single, sensationalist brush is to repeat the exact same sin of stereotyping that has plagued them for centuries. The true story here, the one that lies beneath the controversial headlines, is one of astonishing cultural resilience. For over a millennium, the Romani have survived enslavement, genocide, forced assimilation, economic exclusion, and systemic racism. They have done so by holding fast to their identity, their language, their social codes, and their traditions. In a world that has relentlessly tried to either erase them or exoticize them, simply continuing to exist on their own terms is a profound and powerful act of resistance. Their culture has enriched the world in ways we often fail to acknowledge. The soul-stirring strings of a Romani violinist, the intricate, syncopated rhythms that the great Romani French guitarist Django Reinhardt infused into the DNA of jazz, the passionate, heart-wrenching fire of Spanish flamenco, which owes its existence to the gitanos of Andalusia. These are Romani gifts to global culture. Today, there are Romani doctors, politicians, artists, and scholars across Europe fighting to change the narrative from within, battling against the very stereotypes we've discussed. What the bride market of Stara Zagora ultimately shows us is a microcosm of the entire Romani paradox. It is a tradition that is simultaneously problematic to the modern eye and deeply pragmatic for the community it serves. It is a spectacle that is both a vibrant celebration of life and a stark reflection of economic desperation. It is a window into a community that has been forced to create its own world, with its own rules and its own solutions, precisely because the outside world has offered it so little. It is a messy, uncomfortable, and profoundly human story, and that makes it infinitely more compelling than the simple, shocking headline it is so often reduced to. Our journey to Stara Zagora reveals that a single, controversial event can be a prism reflecting 1,000 years of history. The Bride Market is not just a market. It's a living monument to a people's unbreakable will to survive. A complex tapestry woven from the threads of persecution, poverty, and an unyielding cultural pride. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about our own assumptions and to commit to looking beyond the surface of what we see. It's a vivid lesson that, to truly understand a place, we must be willing to listen to its most difficult and contradictory stories. What part of the Kalaji's story surprised you the most? The deep history of persecution, the economic realities that shape the tradition, or the human emotions behind the negotiations? Share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. If this story opened up a new perspective for you, please share this video with a fellow traveler who loves to dig deeper than the guidebooks. Consider subscribing for more deep dives into the world's most fascinating and misunderstood corners. And if you're curious to uncover the secrets of another complex nation, check out our video. Thank you for joining this journey. Stay curious,